Cadmium is another heavy metal dangerous like lead, but while mandatory standards, maximum limits are in place regarding lead, just this week we learned that when it comes to cadmium, the government is going to try to let the industry police itself. McDonald's recalled 12 million Shrek glasses in June. The designs contained cadmium. This jewelry was also recently recalled because it too contained cadmium. Same goes for this jewelry and this stuff. Cadmium is a cheap, unregulated alternative to lead.
Children's developing bodies are vulnerable to damage from lead and cadmium exposure over the long term poses health risks to adults.
It can cause damage to kidneys and bones. While Congress and the Consumer Product Safety Commission have already imposed mandatory limits on lead in children's toys and jewelry, just this week we learned the CPSC will not do the same with cadmium, at least for now. Instead, they've given guidance about what scientists have determined to be an acceptable level of cadmium, and they're hoping the industry will use those guidelines and police themselves. A representative from the CPSC tells Action News the law requires them to give the Voluntary Standards Organization first crack at setting standards, but that the commission can still push for recalls and institute mandatory limits in the future if the commission deems necessary. But keep in mind, even with mandatory lead levels in place, products slip through, like this book and belts recalled this year because of high lead levels. With the help of an outside lab, our partners at Consumer Reports tested more than 30 children's and household products that testers suspected might contain heavy metals.
Most of the products did not contain potentially hazardous levels of lead or cadmium, but two were of particular concern.
This cell phone charm from Claire's had very high levels of lead, levels that could be hazardous if it's swallowed by a child. And two Kidorable Bumblebee raincoats purchased late last year had worrisome levels of lead as well. Kidorable says it has reformulated the raincoats, and they're now labeled lead-free.
Our tests of coats labeled lead-free found only low or trace amounts of lead well below federal limits.
Jewelry maker Christine Canny says these beads purchased from China were marketed as lead-free, but suspicious, she decided to have them tested.
And they all came back with high amounts of lead.
So despite tough standards and testing on lead and new recommendations regarding cadmium, Consumer Reports says potentially hazardous products are still making their way into the marketplace. As a general rule of thumb, Consumer Reports says don't let children play with cheap metal jewelry. And if they tend to put things in their mouth, add to that brass keys, barrettes, and charms. To see if any of the toys or jewelry you own have been recalled, we've provided a link to the Consumer Product Safety Commission website on our website at WXYZ.com. I'm Joanne Purton, Channel 7 Action News.